This is television for the Isles of Scilly, brought to you with Worldwide Financial Planning, Truro and Penwith College, and the Scilly Lottery. From Radio Scilly, this is scillytv.com. Visitors to the parish fete in St Mary's have been delighted by traditional seaside entertainment, Punch and Judy, with Professor Goodvibe. His Prince Charles puppet proved a hit. Professor Goodvibe came over on the Solonian from Penzance to entertain the crowds. He says he's proud of not subscribing to the rules of political correctness with his puppets and traditional Punch and Judy.
Certainly with a lot of people, yes. I mean, there are people who've been kind of sucked in by the PC thing, but yeah, generally I think ordinary people, they're fed up with it. You know, they're fed up with being told you can't sit here because, you know, you might trip over a dandelion, you can't climb up a tree, you can't do this, you can't do that. What would Punch do? I know what Punch would do. He just give him a whack and say, well, I'm doing it anyway, you know. And that's what it's about. And yeah, I think people, beginning to, just get totally fed up with it. So, good old Mr. Punch. I mean, lead everybody the right way.
Books were selling well at the fete. Jane Chiverton and Sarah Hale were staffing the book table.
They've been very good. We haven't had as many children's books as normal, but the ones we have had have nearly all gone, and there's been a lot of interest in lots of different books. Yeah, it's been good.
The Canon Michael Fisher is looking after the parish church until October. A familiar face to many islanders, he's deputised for Father Guy previously, but this will be the longest time he'll spend in one go in Scilly.
The previous longest was 5 weeks, so this is by far the longest, yes.
Also at the fetes, the man taking over the reins of the parish church in October, he's been meeting islanders. Peter Walker is currently in charge of Theoch, a parish in Cornwall, and works closely with the cathedral, a role he intends to continue with when he comes here. He's used to working in a close-knit community and says there are similarities with the nature of inner London parishes, where he started.
Well, I started in a close-knit environment in East London, actually, but I was in a community that was cut off by the motorway from the Blackwall Tunnel in Hackney, and it was a very tight-knit part of, because East London's like that. It's a number of villages, and we were in one of those villages. And then went up to Cumbria, and we were not only were we with the Cumbrians in the valleys and hills, but we lived as a community, and there were 16 of us running a retreat and conference centre, and so we lived as a very close community, praying and working together. And some came and joined us for a year, and we did that for 11 years. And then came down to Cornwall on the mainland in Porthleven, and then into the cathedral, where I've been for the last 10 years.
The Vet Support Group has found a new place to sell calendars from after a complaint was lodged against their sales outside Tideline. The pavement space they've been using is owned by the business, but the town hall had to act after receiving a complaint that they didn't have the permit required to sell the calendars. The calendars are being sold to raise cash for the new surgery being built at the back of Enor Close, which will also include accommodation for the vet. Pam Manning is one of the committee members and says they're selling well.
It's really lovely that they'll give you a contribution, and then they'll say, if it's only £8 a calendar, I'll give you the 10, and then you give them a sweetie.
So they've been generous, have they?
They've been generous. We've had lots of residents. The first hour was residents, and lots of islanders have bought a calendar to support the surgery. And we've got a picture of the surgery, because it's got the roof trusses on. It's really now looking impacted. It looks fun, and they can see it actually happening. So it's gonna go really well today. And lots of people walking by this morning will come back later on. They didn't want to take a calendar off island, but they've seen us, and they'll be back.
Members of the Vet Support Group have decided not to follow the council's suggestion of getting a permit. They wouldn't be able to do that until the October council meeting, and that would mean they'd miss sales with lots of visitors over the summer period. Instead, they've put the calendars on sale on Saturday mornings in the garden of Evergreen Cottage. And here's a good and effective sales ploy for creating awareness of your event. Bring in the reindeer. They seem to draw a crowd. Keen Vet Support Group supporter Stella Wyburn-Risdale was offering hers for petting. There's uncertainty whether the Longstone Centre will be used as a site to house builders. Councillors gave permission to put pods, temporary accommodation, in the field behind the centre on St Mary's, but some members said they did it reluctantly. Chief Planning Officer Craig Dryden says it wasn't the ideal solution, but with the school build creating a demand for accommodation for up to 70 builders, the spaces, which would accommodate 32, were required. There was a planning condition that the units have to be removed no later than 3 months after the school build is finished. Now, though, we understand there's uncertainty whether Longstone will be developed in this way. Council staff are looking into housing builders in accommodation in town. As the height of the accommodation requirement is in May and June next year, some islanders are concerned that will create a squeeze for accommodation for visitors. No decision's been made yet. We'll keep you updated on Radio Scilly. Islanders have been paying tribute to Matt Lethbridge, who passed away in August. Matt was a highly respected and decorated lifeboat man who remained dedicated to the RNLI for 40 years. Tributes were led by John Nichols.
I mean, Matt is synonymous, in the true sense of the word, with lifeboat. Every visiting lifeboat or crew would always, especially the more senior ones, going back, would always call in to see Matt. If not call in, they would always ask after him. Whenever I got any correspondence from people with checks and stuff, they often asked, how's Matt Lethbridge? So he was synonymous with lifeboat, and especially, with St Mary's lifeboat, because the Lethbridge family was St Mary's lifeboat.
John Nichols, former Lifeboat Launch Authority. Chris Thomas holds the role now, and he knows how Matt would wish to be remembered.
When Matt was on the lifeboat, I think you find most people felt, well, things will be all right because Matt's there, and this is the image he portrayed. He was a very modest man, and as I say, I can remember many other times also watching him, repairing pots down on the beach, or with his boat, the JML. No, I've got lots of fond memories of Matt during my childhood. And as I say, it's the end of an era now. God bless him.
From this autumn, islanders or visitors who let their dogs foul public spaces will be subject to on-the-spot fines of £85. Andy Thomas is from the Community Safety Partnership.
The short answer is the orders are on their way. The thing is, it's quite a convoluted process to get them started, and of course, as we're dealing with it's going to be money being taken off people in terms of fines, we have to be very careful as to how we approach this and make sure everything is legally sound, and so a lot of work has gone into making sure that we are doing things correctly. There is a correct way of going about starting the orders, and things to do with how they should be advertised, and when and where you can use them, etc., etc. There's an awful lot of guidance. So we are very close now to bringing them in. I would say it would be around, we are looking at autumn. Certainly will be no later than that, but I'm thinking around November, October possibly, that they might well be in effect on Scilly. The short answer is, once they've been caught, once the order has been set up, it would then therefore be an offence punishable by a fine of £1,000 if you are caught breaching an order. So once you are caught, we could, if we so wish, take you straight to court and start legal proceedings. The idea behind the fixed penalties is that hopefully such a thing would act as a deterrent. People don't particularly want to go to court and get a £1,000 fine, so the £75 that would be offered as a fixed penalty notice rather than a court appearance hopefully would go some way to convincing people that it's actually a bad idea to be doing this, and is going to hit you in the pocket. So perhaps it's worth your time carrying a bag and dealing with the mess as it happens. Some people are shocked and genuinely upset to have received a letter. People's reactions vary, but I mean, we don't send a letter unless we know for sure through witnesses coming forward, or be that a member of the public, several members of the public, or our dog warden seeing something, and us obviously having a chat, sit down with those witnesses and making sure that everything is to our liking, if you want, so there's no chance that anything can be contested. We feel we would, once we then send the letter, you know, as I say, you know, people's reactions do vary. People do get very defensive about it, and that's to be expected. On the whole, no, you shouldn't really notice much, apart from we are looking to extend the period for which people aren't permitted on some of the beaches on the islands. Whereas that used to run from the 1st of May, we are now looking to make that run for the 1st of April. But if people will have a chance to have their say on that when we run the consultation event, so nothing is set in stone as such at the moment. The GU argument, if you like, came about in the beginning because one of the agencies involved was very keen to keep dogs off the uninhabited islands, and of course GU kind of fell in a grey area there, where it isn't recognised as one of the 5 inhabited islands of the Scillies, as we like to think of the Scillies. I mean, the latest set of order guidance that we've come up with has actually scrapped the idea of dogs being banned from the uninhabited islands. So, as I said before, the orders will be pretty much in line with what we already have in place, albeit that we can now issue fixed penalties. So no, the GU thing is a bit of a red herring, let's say. You are the owner of the dog, much like if you have a child, it's still your child, unfortunately. So if there is an expectation for you to have some control over your animal, be your animal with you at the time, or even with someone else. Someone else could be walking it. You know, there is a raft of guidance out there that we can look at, and you know, there are some exceptions and exclusions that, you know, you might fall under if your dog is fouling, that may enable you to not pay the fine. But a lot of these things have been thought about quite a lot in the guidance. So I mean, dog ownership was one of the big ones. So yeah, it is very much recognised that if it is your dog, you should either A, trust the person who's taking your dog out, or B, you know, have a real interest in what is happening to your dog when you've not got your eye on it. Because if it's not affecting you, it's going to be affecting someone if it's outside. So you've got to accept that. Well, I hope to see that in the consultation. I would imagine a fair few people, particularly dog owners, have got very strong views on it. Likewise, I expect people who don't own dogs to have quite strong views on it. And I expect those views to be quite polarised, but we'll know more in October.